worldwide UFO cover-up by Timothy Good. World War II, the Los Angeles Air Raid, 1942. On February 25, 1942, less than 3 months after the Japanese invasion of Pearl Harbor, unidentified aircraft appeared over the city of Los Angeles, causing widespread alarm, and 1,430 rounds of anti-aircraft shells were fired in an attempt to bring down what were considered to be Japanese airplanes. On that day, at least 1 million Southern California residents awoke to the wail of air raid sirens as Los Angeles County cities blacked out at 2:25 a.m. 12,000 air raid wardens reported dutifully to their posts, and most expecting nothing more than a dress rehearsal. But at 3:16 a.m., however, the 37th Coast Artillery Brigade's anti-aircraft batteries began firing away 12.8-pound shells at the targets as searchlights beamed studded the sky. The shelling continued intermittently until 4:14 a.m. 3 people were killed and 3 died of heart attacks directly attributable to the barrage, and several homes and public buildings were severely damaged by unexploded shells. At 7:21 a.m., the blackout was lifted and the sirens sounded the all clear. But what about the Japanese invaders? Aircraft of the 4th Interceptor Command had been warming up, waiting for orders to intercept and engage their intruders. Yet no such orders were given during the 51-minute period between the first air raid alert and the first military barrage. Clearly, no enemy aircraft were involved in the invasion. According to thousands of witnesses, a large unidentified flying object remained stationary while the anti-aircraft shells burst around it and against it. A Herald Express staff writer said he was certain that many shells burst directly in the middle of the object, and he could not believe that it had not been shot down. The object eventually proceeded at a leisurely pace over the coastal cities between Santa Monica and Long Beach, taking about 20 minutes of actual flight time to move 20 miles, then disappeared from view. An interesting eyewitness account of the Phantom Raid has been provided by Paul T. Collins, who had been working late at the Long Beach plant of the Douglas Aircraft Company and was returning home when he was stopped by an air raid warden in Pasadena who told him to turn out the lights of his car and stay parked beside the road until the all clear sounded. Pacing back and forth across the street trying to keep warm, Collins suddenly saw bright red spots of light low on the horizon to the south, which were moving in a strange manner. They seem to be functioning or navigating mostly on a level plane, Collins said. At that moment, that is, not rising up from the ground in an arc or trajectory or in a straight line and then falling right back to Earth, but appearing from nowhere and then zigzagging from side to side. Some disappeared, not diminishing in brilliance at all, but just vanishing out into the night. Others remained pretty much on the same level, but we can only guess their elevation to be about 10,000 feet. In less than 5 minutes, at least half a dozen red flashes rent the sky among the strange spots of red light, followed in about 100 seconds by the dull cushioned thuds of the bursting shells. One of the anti-aircraft batteries around the Douglas Aircraft Plant, Doherty Field, or the Signal Hill oil field, had fired a salvo into the moving spots of red light, according to Collins, whose position was about 20 miles from the aircraft factory. Taking into account our distance from Long Beach, the extensive pattern of firing from widely separated anti-aircraft batteries, and the movement of the unidentified red objects among and around the bursting shells in wide orbits, we estimated their top speed conservatively to be 5 miles per second. We did not see the enormous UFO seen by thousands of other observers closer to the coast. Very likely it was below our horizon and a few miles farther up the coast at that time. The military were thoroughly embarrassed and confused by the incident, but were obliged to come up with an explanation. In Washington, U.S. Navy Secretary Knox announced that there had in fact been no planes over the city and that the barrage of anti-aircraft fire had been triggered by a false alarm and jittery war nerves. This statement incensed the press, who called attention to the loss of life and implied that the raid was a propaganda exercise by government officials who wanted to move vital industries inland. Commented the Long Beach Independent, "There is a mysterious reticence about the whole affair, and it appears some form of censorship is trying to halt discussion of the matter." This story, as with so many other UFO reports, reads like something straight out of science fiction. Yet it happened. A hitherto secret memorandum released in 1974 under provisions of the U.S. Freedom of Information Act leaves little room for doubt that something extraordinary occurred that night. The memorandum was written by General George C. Marshall, Chief of Staff, and sent to President Franklin Delano Roosevelt on 26 February 1942. The following is the information we have from GHQ at this moment regarding the air alarm over Los Angeles of yesterday morning. From details available at this hour. Number 1, unidentified airplanes other than American Army or Navy planes were probably over Los Angeles and were fired on by elements of the 37th CA Brigade ACAC unit between 3:12 and 4:15 a.m. These units expended 1,430 rounds of ammunition. Number 2, as many as 15 airplanes may have been involved, flying at various speeds from what is officially reported as being very slow to as much as 200 miles per hour and at elevations from 9,000 to 18,000 feet. Number 3, no bombs were dropped whatsoever. Number 4, 4, no casualties among our troops. Number 5, no planes were shot down. Number 6, no American Army or Navy planes were in action. Investigation continuing, it seems reasonable to conclude that if unidentified airplanes were involved, they may have been from commercial sources operated by enemy agents for purposes of spreading alarm, disclosing locations of anti-aircraft positions, and slowing production through blackout. Such conclusion is supported by varying speed of operation and the fact that no bombs were dropped. Although General Marshall concluded that conventional aircraft were involved, he must have been baffled by the fact that none were shot down, despite the intensive barrage of shells. The officially reported speeds of up to 200 miles per hour come nowhere near Paul Collins' estimate of up to 5 miles per second. Either Collins was way off the mark, or the official estimates were. There is also the possibility that none of the military observers was in a position to make an accurate assessment, or that they simply could not bring themselves to report such fantastic speeds and maneuvers. Prior to the release of the Marshall Memorandum, the Department of Defense stated that they had no record of the event whatsoever. Combined with the contradictory news releases at that time, the evidence points to a cover-up by those in the military who were in a position to know what really happened, even if they were at a loss to explain the incident.
The Crescent Moon Club, in association with ABT, presents Omnibus Unlimited, a roundtable discussion of provocative subjects which must be addressed today. Radiovision for the 21st century. Hello again, everyone. I'm Laurence Nobile, independent researcher and host of Omnibus Unlimited. Tonight, from our ABT studios in Dover, our topic for discussion is the Los Angeles air raid of 1942. With us to discuss this topic is ufologist Dan Murray. Dan, thanks for being here this evening.
Good to be here, Larry.
Psychic healer and medical technician Tom Murray. Tom, thank you very much. I almost called you Dan.
Good evening, listeners. Good evening, Larry. Good evening, Dan, and everybody else in the studio.
Communications specialist Kevin Smith. Kevin, thanks for being here this evening.
Always a thrill to be here, Larry. Thank you.
Weatherman Damon Nobile. Damon, thank you very much for taking the time out to be here.
Oh, no problem at all. Just happy to be here.
And very helpful in setting up our ABT studios here in Dover. And of course, as usual, our own seeker and producer of Omnibus Unlimited, Mr. John Horrigan. John, thanks once again for making the show possible and for being here.
Oh, thanks a lot, and thanks to our special guests, Kevin Smith, Tom and Dan Murray, and Damon Nobile, the weatherman, and of course yourself, Larry. It's great to be here. Great subject tonight.
Thank you, John. It is. It's a very exciting subject. The Los Angeles air raid of 1942. This is unprecedented. How many times has Los Angeles been bombed, or how many times have they had an air raid? Actually, the air raid of 1942 for Los Angeles, there were actually no explosions. But let's begin this subject. John just gave a tremendous rendition of the story of the Los Angeles air raid of 1942 from Above Top Secret, the worldwide UFO cover-up by Timothy Good. What facts do we have for this show, gentlemen? There were no explosions. There was certainly a great deal of anti-aircraft fire. People in Los Angeles were warned to take cover. These facts are undeniable. There are some eyewitness accounts of glowing objects, various colors, as I recall. But aside from that, and the fact that like 3 people died from heart attacks and so forth, but can be attributed to mass hysteria. What other facts do we have? Can this in any way be associated with the Japanese balloon bombs that we've talked about before? Tom Murray.
Thank you, Larry. Larry, the one thing that strikes me important about this, say, let's take it from a military or a medical standpoint, being in the medical field, I always want to know is, did somebody get hurt? Did somebody get injured? They state that 1,430 rounds were fired by anti-aircraft guns, as ACAC guns. I believe they're about 50 caliber. That's a big slug. You could put your fist through the hole that makes in a human being. So these guns were trying to pull down something. They were trying to shoot something. The second issue is we wouldn't waste that amount of ammunition just to shoot into the sky because the boys had a few beers on Friday night. The third issue is it stated that the so-called enemy that we're trying to shoot down fired no weapons, dropped no bombs, did no damage. It just floated there and looked at us. And many, many military people reported that, wow, we hit the thing. We hit it square on, and our bombs seemed to explode off of it. I suspect if it's a UFO, or I don't think it's a UFO, I think it's a group of UFOs, because they mentioned firing into a crowd of red lights. Again, as I've mentioned before, it's noted that the red light on a UFO is always on the top of a UFO. I'm not sure of the weather conditions on that night, but a red light is much more visible than blue, green, and yellow. Well, maybe blue-green. And also, as I mentioned, on a UFO, if they use their lights as a form of being a hypnotist, you often use a circular motion light or a spiral or something like that to draw people's attention to, as Kevin had mentioned earlier, possibilities of mass hypnosis in certain situations, that if I was trying to mass hypnotize a group of people, I might use that swirling light pattern to hypnotize people, but that the red light wouldn't be used for hypnosis, and the red light seems to me to be a combination beacon and energizer, red being close to the color of the sun, yes. That over and over and over in all the UFO reports Dan's brought to me, or that John has brought to me, that the red light appears to be on the top of a craft and the other lights underneath. The other thing is that there are no other lights visible. If I was being fired at and I had a combat vehicle or even an observational vehicle, the thing I would do is cut down all unnecessary electrical units, all unnecessary radiation, all unnecessary lights, all unnecessary communication. Again, referring back to my medical background, the only people that died of fear. Nobody got a stray shot winged into them either, including the fellow parked by the side of the road there. We have to remember this man worked for what was the name of the aircraft company? McDonnell Douglas. There was on the cutting edge. In fact, they're the people that developed the flying wing that today is called the stealth bomber, and that was being worked on in World War II. And they denied that it was being worked on all that time. In fact, up until 1985, we were told that nobody had ever tried to develop that. And yet we had a flying wing back in World War II. It wasn't real stable. It had something like 8 engines, turboprop engines, but we were told it didn't exist. We were told many things don't exist. One person asked me to compare this specifically to the Rice balloon bombing that we discussed 2 shows ago. I don't think it's the same thing. Number one, these Rice balloons were more like Rice kites, I probably suspect, with some kind of a heating device to warm a light gas that would float these things along a wind current. They all fell in one area. They were offensive. They were bombs. They were short-term. They fell on an area. If you fired at these things, it would have blown up in the sky.
Right.
They had no lights attached. It's just like if you flew a kite with a firecracker attached to it. This is an incident of very large vehicles moving at reportedly 30 miles per second, 5 miles per second, which translates into 300 miles per minute, over 1,000 miles per hour, which even the Germans didn't do with their jet aircraft, and yet the Germans were the first in 1945 to use jet aircraft. My uncle, Bob Cunningham, was a fighter pilot in World War II and in the Korean War, a bomber pilot. He was decorated for acts of bravery, and he's one of the first people to ever see a jet aircraft. We did not have a jet aircraft, the Germans did, and it did not fly at 1,000 miles an hour. So let's give the man the air of the doubt. Still, if it was a balloon, I can't see balloons flying around at 300 miles an hour and changing direction.
You mentioned that the Germans, Tom, had the V2, of course, that they haunted the English in London. They had the Messerschmitt 222, which was the first operable military jet.
Yes, and the Messerschmitt is still being built in some configuration or other somewhere around the world. Now, if it was a V2 bomber or a V1 bomber, at that time, Germany did not have the technology to build a rocket with that range and that distance to travel all the way to California, an extra 3,000 miles. Also, the other issue is that the V2 bomber and the V1 bomber are rocket ships. They have a fuel that shoots them up on an arc. When they reach the maximum of their arc, just like a firecracker with a spiral on it, they fall down silently without any energy. They can't hover. They're going to land, crash, and boom. So I see no offensive threat from this group of red lights that were moving around at fantastic speeds. I see a defensive threat from the American military forces. What the hell's up there? Let's shoot it down. It's probably the Japanese or whatever. And yet, whenever you have a firefight, you always have some casualties. And yet there was no wreckage, no debris, no wounded fighter pilots. So to me, it has to be something that wasn't what we expect. At the time, also, the Japanese did not have any aircraft carriers that anybody knows of. Whether going back to military records in Japan, or in the United States, there's no talk of a Japanese aircraft carrier off the coast at that time. What's interesting to me, I think, is that this helped galvanize an organization as a little boy, because I was interested in my father's service in the war, and I wondered what would happen with the war. I read some books published and created in World War II era called the Civil Air Defense League, and it was sort of like a junior Air Force spotting system. And you would look at the outline of aircraft, from the side, from the front. You were taught to listen to the sound of an aircraft engine. You could tell if it was a bomber or a fighter. You knew the speed, you knew the flighting and arc habits of the aircraft, and that people throughout the United States in both coasts, the West Coast and the East Coast, were trained. They had uniforms, they had communication systems, and they would stand on the coast with binoculars and a two-way radio and report in any unusual sightings. Others were also trained to try to pick out submarines. Submarines, if we remember, off the coast of New England, and also off the coast of California. So the average citizen wasn't a dithered, uneducated, blathering idiot who didn't know what the hell was going on. He was a person that was usually trained to be very alert and very aware of what's going on. I guess also there was a real fear of California being bombed at the time, and I might refer to Dan Murray. I think he knows of a movie that was done at that time. John?
Tom, we spoke on a couple of shows ago when we spoke about Japanese balloon bombs, about the idea of American invulnerability, American invincibility. Now, I know my dad used to walk the beach of Brant Rock, Wrexham, Green Harbor for mines with shepherds, and he would see freighters burning off the coast at night, and do you remember 6 days later, one body's washing up on shore? This is on Massachusetts. So the U-boats were operating, as we've seen, they're pulling them up, the hulls of the U-boats were operating very close in American waters. One's surfaced in Scituate Harbor, shot down a barrage balloon and then submerged again and split, and nobody caught it. So now when you talk about the fear of Los Angeles being bombed, I think there was a parody made about that. Indeed, I like the movie. It was...
Yeah, John Belushi made the movie. I think it was 1941 or 42 about that, and they thought the Japanese were attacking, and it was a false alarm, and he goes screaming down the middle of the main street, shooting up the movie theaters. It's fantastic, but this is where the idea came from. There was a real incident that happened with over 1 million witnesses that's totally unexplained. They shot, as Tom said, very large. If you can picture a bullet, size of your fist. Yeah, it was much larger than your fist, the size of your arm, really. I've seen 50 calibers on B-52s.
Right, I wanted to discuss that with you, Dan.
We're not talking toy bullets here or 22. We're talking gigantic bullets that the average person just couldn't conceive of. You're talking two men loading these bullets.
And if you're just joining us, this program is called Omnibus Unlimited, and tonight our roundtable is discussing the subject of the Los Angeles air raid of 1942. Now, Dan Murray, I wanted to talk to you about that. There were 3 different accounts in terms of air speed. 200 miles an hour, 300 miles an hour, and 5 miles a second, which turns out to be almost 2,000 miles an hour. Now, it was Tom Murray mentioned that there were approximately 1,500 rounds fired. And, of course, these are 50 caliber bullets which looked like rockets, actually, large pieces of metal. And 50 caliber is about the size of, or the width of a cigarette, almost. But
Oh, much larger.
what are the chances that 1,500 rounds are fired at several glowing objects and not one of them hits? What are the odds of that at any of those speeds? Well, at 5 miles a second, you might evade a 50 caliber machine gun. Is that about right? At 5 miles a second?
Well, there was reports of direct hits by a reporter observing the entire thing, and other people, where it was by the guns shooting. There were reports of direct hits onto the large object that was hovering over, and it just slowly went about its ways. The faster speeds were seen by the smaller craft, it appeared, from the other witnesses that were around.
To interrupt you here, the faster speeds were estimations not by a sighting of the craft itself, but of a distance and time approximating of the shells being fired at it.
Tracer bullets.
What do you think?
I don't know about that. The guy was describing red lights that were moving. He wasn't describing tracer bullets. And they were in various different directions that he spotted. He did not spot the larger object, and he's the one that is reporting the faster speeds.
To reiterate the account, taking into account our distance from Long Beach, the extensive pattern of firing from widely separated aircraft batteries, and the movement of unidentified red objects and among and around the bursting shells in wide orbits, we estimate their top speeds conservatively to be 5 miles per second. That does not seem to say that they were watching the same object go through, a line, but to say that they may have been sighting an object over here and an object over there. If there were 2 or 3 or 4 objects floating around being fired at, it's conceivable that that could have been misconstrued into a rapid speed of one object.
Baloney, because the one over L.A. was hovering.
Well,
it's described very...
Well, Dan, what they do
very
mention is...
simply, as it was hovering, the other ones were moving, the ones that were... further out.
Dan, what they do mention is there were a group of red lights and that they were firing at the group of red lights.
You will never ever see a mother ship without smaller ships.
But they didn't know there were mother ships.
Again, you're putting too much into this. I'm
not putting anything into it. I'm telling you right now, that was a mother ship.
Something was seen
hovering. I'd love
hovering.
to joke to say that they came down to see the latest Bogart movie and got turned away. But you had a mother ship over L.A., Los Angeles, with 1 million witnesses, and you had the smaller ships outside. They always operate this way. You will hardly ever see a mother ship without the smaller red ones.
Whom is they?
Well, we have been visited by at least 3 planets, if not more, and this is one of the typical UFO
You're taking this
landings.
much too far. This is in the middle of the war. This was an aggressor activity.
No,
even if it was only a way of gathering data, it was an aggressor activity.
The best
It
mind...
could very well have been a German-built...
baloney. That's a lie.
It's not
That's
real.
a lie.
Still,
That's a lie.
still framed.
Because to this day, man has not
Hydrogen-filled
invented anything that can stop a 50 caliber
Zeppelin.
bullet.
But it's not a...
Nothing.
I disagree with you.
and other craft being dropped from the Zeppelin, other craft being small aircraft. Now the descriptions.
Wait. Well, hold on. The Hindenburg was trashed by then. The Graf Zeppelin, I believe, was still in a hangar with all sorts of aeronautical problems, and the USS Akron was retired prior to World War II. So don't bring up dirigibles, because dirigibles were not operable at the stage of 1942. But as far as an aggressive, it was aggressive in the sense, Kevin, that it tripped the radar that they had. And it was young and radar in its infancy, the way they tripped it. Now, the Ju-88, the Germans used to have the Ju-88s fly into Britain. They dropped things of foil to disrupt their primitive radar. But this thing did not drop bombs.
Very, very interesting. Again, when we talk about facts, the facts are that there was an air raid called in Los Angeles in 1942. There were multiple visual sightings of strange glowing UFOs, and let us remind everyone that a UFO is an unidentified flying object, and if you see a light going by in the sky, you probably know it's an airplane, but technically it's an unidentified flying object until you identify it. So what Dan Murray is talking about is strictly extraterrestrials coming from other planets.
Right, I don't believe in any other description, and let me tell you what the kicker is, okay? The U.S. government, the military, made a statement. This is typical of all confirmed UFO sightings. They came out with a statement, and then within a 2-week period, denied anything happened. So after making a statement public, they denied they even made a statement.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, of course, Kevin, on your statement that it was an aggressor act by an enemy over the United States, my first question is, was it Japan or was it Germany? If it was Germany, how did they get one aircraft over to Japan to transport it over the United States, over a major city with a defense? And why didn't they use it again if it could hover over a city while being shot at and receive no damage?
Yes.
That's the aircraft I would use.
Deleted.
My second question is, if it's Japanese, why didn't they use that? Why didn't they use that instead of kamikaze airplane to try to sink ships? Why didn't they just keep building the same thing over and over? You haven't told me what country it came from.
Okay, a Zeppelin flew at such high altitudes that no bombing or anti-aircraft could actually hit the thing.
Okay, but
the
again,
description of the exploding shells might not have been to the Zeppelin directly, but the Zeppelin has the capability of dropping other flying aircraft, bi-wing aircraft. And what if they transported it via the sea and just lifted it off to go do its observations, bring it back? Maybe the project didn't do what they wanted it to do. They scrapped the whole thing at sea. I don't know.
Kevin, you're absolutely 100% right in World War I. Wrong war, Kevin. They solved that problem in World War I by having explosive bombs go off and blow up the Zeppelins. That's what put an end to all of them. And as it describes in the things, they burst. And all bullets after that were made to burst to put away the Zeppelin.
And that will have to end. Our No, we'll give Kevin Smith one. No. And I might add, according to the facts, there were direct hits, and nothing was shut down. But that will have to end our discussion of the Los Angeles air raid of 1942. I'd like to thank my guests for being here tonight, and I might add that the fighting for the microphone was unprecedented and very inspiring. UFOlogist Dan Murray. Dan, thanks for being here this evening.
Anytime, Larry.
Psychic healer and medical technician Tom Murray. Tom, thanks for being here this evening.
I just don't think it was a cousin of the grass spree.
Communications expert Kevin Smith. Kevin, thanks very much for taking part and getting very hot under the collar.
A thrill being part of this discussion, Larry.
Weatherman Damon Nobile. Damon, thanks for sitting in and at least listening to what we had to say.
I got a bar of soap for your mouth there, Tom.
And as always, our seeker and producer of Omnibus Unlimited, John Horrigan. John, thanks once again.
Thank you, Larry. Thanks, guys.
I'd also like to add that Omnibus Unlimited is continuing its search for aspiring artists and videographers to display their work on our visual backdrop of Omnibus Unlimited. If you are just such a person, send us your name, address, phone number, and area of study to Omnibus Unlimited, Box 577, Dover, Massachusetts, 02030-0577, and perhaps your work will be displayed on Omnibus Unlimited. For the rest of our audience, if you have any questions, comments, suggestions, or if you'd like to be a guest on Omnibus Unlimited, that address once again is Omnibus Unlimited, Box 577, Dover, Massachusetts, 02030-0577. I'm Laurence Nobile, independent researcher and host of Omnibus Unlimited, saying thank you for your attention, good night, and good luck. Omnibus Unlimited is a presentation of ABT and the Crescent Moon Club.